Let's look at this. 2003, GE Healthcare went to Finland and acquired the world's biggest patient monitoring company and the biggest anesthesia company in the world, and became the global leader, a position that it still retains. And then 2015, January, GE Healthcare decided to establish its global Center of Excellence for Mobile Digital Health in Finland. Next one, 2015, November, Startup Health, that many of you may know, the biggest incubator for health tech startups in the world, decided to establish its first and only center outside the US in Helsinki. And then just 2 weeks ago, IBM decided to establish their first Watson Health Center outside the United States in Helsinki that will be focusing on analyzing medical images. So why is this? And what's Finland all about anyway? You know, this is California. We are about 80% of the area, the landmass of California. So by European standards, we are a fairly large country. But then if you look at the population, you know, 5.5 million people, not great. So what is it that attracts all these companies to Finland? And let me introduce myself at this point. I run the global anesthesia and respiratory care business for GE Healthcare, based out of Helsinki. And as of March this year, I'm also the managing director of GE Healthcare Finland. So I'm a recent returnee to Finland. In fact, I lived the past 35 years of my life in China. So when the company asked me at the end of last year whether I'd like to move to Finland, I had to actually take the map and see where is Finland and what is Finland all about. So I'd like to share some of that with you, what I've discovered over the past few months. So here we are. Helsinki is at about the same latitude as Anchorage, about 60 degrees north. And the top of Finland is at about the same latitude as the top of Alaska. You know, and who lives in Alaska? Can you imagine a buzzing health tech startup scene in Alaska? So why Finland? We have a very good healthcare system in the country. And in fact, it started 100 years ago when we set up the first maternal infant care center, welfare center in the country. Until then, most everybody in Finland was born in a sauna. And speaking of saunas, that's probably the first Finnish healthcare innovation that has become global. We've got 5.5 million people. Guess how many saunas we have? We've got 2.2 million saunas. So in any given time, we can perfectly well fit the whole population in the sauna. And given the climate, you can imagine that's something that we should probably introduce to Alaska as well. But as a result of setting up this system for maternal and infant care, we now have the lowest maternal and infant mortality rates in the country. And it's not just babies. You know, the whole population of 5.5 million is covered by a universally available and sustainable healthcare system. And it's mostly public. Only about 5% of inpatient care is provided by private providers. And even though the coverage 100% is still not exorbitantly expensive, it's sustainable. It's only about 9.7% of the GDP is spent on healthcare. In the US, the number is 17.1, and the OECD average about 12 point something. So, you know, at a fairly low cost, we are able to provide care for the whole population, which is not too bad. So the healthcare tradition is there, the healthcare system is well set up for anybody who is thinking of finding a place to invest in healthcare startups. Then digital health. You know, I mentioned the babies, that's where it starts. You know, every Finn has a full record of his or her health information that is all online. You know, we have how many percent? We got 98% of patient records in electronic format. In the US, that's about 70-something percent. And it starts before you're born. So before you're born, all the data about you gets into that register. And every single episode you have, every single prescription, every single healthcare and wellness event gets recorded in that. And you have full access to all that information through one central database. So those of you who have read Eric Toppel's book, The Patient Will See You Now, about patient-centric healthcare, we started it ages ago, and it's all available. We also have a national identification number, so every single person can be identified by the same by their own unique number, and you can track back everything, all the information about them through that number, which makes research very easy. We've had the National Cancer Research Database since 1953, and all the information in that database can be tracked back to whatever happened to that patient earlier. And the legislation supports this too. So the Biobank Act actually enables us to recall any patient for further research purposes if necessary. And people's attitudes are very open to this. You know, they think it's a good thing for them and good thing for the country. And in fact, regarding the legislation and why Finland is in the forefront of innovation and the digital revolution. Let's take the example of self-driving cars. You know, it's all the buzz these days. You know, everybody talks about it. But legislation can be very complicated. But I can tell you, and this is just one example of how much foresight the Finnish legislators have had. In 1982, when we rewrote the traffic law in the country, that piece of legislation consists of 10,000 words, all very carefully selected. And there's one word missing, and that's a driver. There's no mention of a driver in the traffic law. And hence, we don't need to change the law to have self-driving cars in the streets. And that's why we now have the first public bus anywhere in the world running in the streets of Helsinki. I mean, not all over the place, in a very limited area, but still. Because after all, we only have 5.5 million people, and we want to keep it that way. Right. So why is all this? The education level in Finland is very good. You know, school is mainly public. There are very, very few private schools, and it's all free, from the very beginning to university and beyond. So 84% of the population have upper secondary education. The OECD average is 75. 39 have a tertiary degree. Again, OECD 32%. 90% of Finns under the age of 30 speak English. 70% of the adult population maintain that they can have a conversation in English. The European average is 38%, and Finland is 90%, right? And that 38 probably includes the UK as well, right? So on todella kätevä, että Suomessa toimijaksi ei tarvitse opetella suomea. Meaning it's very practical that to operate in Finland, you don't need to learn Finnish, right? It's much easier. You can have a full university education in Finland in English only. And then, you know, what does that lead to? It leads to us having a lot of engineers. You're twice as likely to run into an engineer in Finland that you are in the US, for instance. Right. So, speaking of technology, what's the game that was all the buzz for a few months just recently? Pokemon something. I think they should change the name to Pokemon Gone, because it's no longer the #1 selling game in the app stores. It's been replaced by a Finnish game. In fact, Pokemon Go was on the top of the list for 74 days. And guess what was on that list, #1, for 347 days before that? It was the Clash of Clans. And now the Clash Royale has replaced Pokemon Gone, right? So, you know, from a country of 5.5 million people, where do all these games come from? Where does all that innovation come from? And why is that related to healthcare, apart from gamification, that is also a hot topic in healthcare today? So I think the foundation is wireless communication. We are very well known for that. And with the unfortunate demise of Nokia's mobile phone business, a lot of that creativity, a lot of that technology was unleashed. So we have tons of small companies that are growing and innovating in the telecommunications space. And we have the most innovative 5G network in Finland, open to anyone, Finnish companies or foreign companies. We've got everyone lined up, you know, Nokia, Ericsson, Huawei, Intel, IBM, GE, everybody is lined up to make use of this infrastructure as we are developing the next generation of communication technology. And then finally, we have a lot of startups. And I'd like to make special reference to an event that will be taking place in Helsinki in November called Slush. So we have about 13,000 people. We had about 13,000 people last year, about 3,000 startups, about investors from about 100 countries and all that. It's the biggest startup event on the planet. And we would like to invite you all to attend that. So this is our facility. We have a startup village, a health innovation village. In our facility, we regard startups as vitally important for our future. We don't want to do everything ourselves. We've invested in the country tens of millions of dollars in this mobile digital health program. The government is supporting us. You know, the infrastructure is just there. The ecosystem is there. And I think you should all come. And if you look at who's coming, you may recognize the name on the boarding pass. We have specially arranged an aircraft for you straight from San Francisco to Helsinki and back to take you to Slush. So you don't need to worry about the travel arrangements. So with that, I'd like to invite you to Slush, to Finland, and to the Team Finland booth at the exhibition. And if this piqued your interest, then please contact one of us and talk to us more about Finland. Thank you very much for your time.